No one can make you feel inferior without your consent. It's up to me whether I will accept what they're saying is truth about me or is something else. No one can make you feel inferior without your consent means, hey, it's up to me whether I'm going to let you make me feel this way.
It's a relatable wisdom, the podcast where people share timeless ideas. I'm your host, Wisdom Okwesbo. And every episode, we dive into the philosophy, sports, points, and life lessons that shape how we live, think, and grow. No matter where you are in life, this show is here to remind you wisdom is everywhere and it's always relatable most of the times. Entrepreneurs and leaders shift their mindset from scarcity to abundance and build scalable seven-figure businesses, all while living incredibly full every day. Get ready for practical mindset wisdom that can change your life. Okay, tell us your name and what your favorite quote is.
My favorite quote?
Yeah, your name and then your favorite quote.
Sure. So my name is Martin Salama, and I would have to say that my favorite quote comes from Eleanor Roosevelt, who was the wife of FDR, President Roosevelt from the 40s. And she says, no one can make you feel inferior without your consent.
Oh, no one can make you inferior without your consent.
Meaning that they could say something bad about you, but it's up to you whether you let them make you feel bad about it.
Yeah. When did you get, when was your first introduction to this quote? Can you still remember
I would have to say it was about 15 years ago. I was going through a divorce. I was going through a major financial change in my life, and I was looking to move forward, and I decided to become a life coach. And somewhere around that point, I saw that quote as I was coming out of these things that were the negatives in my life, and I realized I was doing that a lot. I allowed other people, what they said, to affect me. I took everything personally.
Whoa. No one can make you feel pain
inferior.
Except you allow them. Okay, no one can make you feel inferior except you allow them.
Without your consent.
Without your consent. Would you say, can this quote be misinterpreted?
Yeah, it could be misinterpreted. Someone could take it to mean that you're not in control of your feelings. And what I'm saying is it's not that simple. It's about understanding that if you allow your feelings to control you, then you're not in control of your feelings.
Okay. Now, I want us to step back. You said you got introduced to these quotes 15 years ago. Can you give me a couple, 2 to 3 instances of when people or circumstances that were terrible, or maybe that you were supposed to feel bad or inferior, but you chose to say, no, I choose how I feel. And you're like, this is how I want to feel about this situation. Can you give us examples of that in your life?
Oh, yeah, sure. Absolutely. So as I was going through my divorce, I had one of my children were getting married. My wife, she was still my wife at the time, but we were going through the divorce. Actually, we had finished the divorce, and she did something that was disrespectful to me. And in the past, I would have gotten very upset with her and said, you know, what you did there insulted me. And I would have yelled and screamed at her right away as soon as I found out. I decided, based on when it was a few days before the wedding, that I would not do my old thing of getting upset right away, taking it personally, and blowing up right there, because that was the old me. I would wait until after the wedding, my son's wedding, so as not to disturb everything that was going on. And a few days later, I called her up and I said, you know, this is what you did. It was very disrespectful, and I had a controlled anger. And I told her how I felt, and I ended it by telling her, thank you for divorcing me. For me, that was a moment of clarity and closure, because until then, I was not so feeling great about the divorce. Not that I felt great afterwards, but I felt better. And I recognized that even though I was married to this woman for 25 years, it was the best thing to happen for us to get divorced.
Okay. That's the first one. Okay. What's the second one?
Okay, let me think about it. Another one would be, you know, there are many times where people feel they get into an argument. And for me, it used to be people couldn't have conversations with me. They would have confrontations. Whereas because my guard was always up, I was always taking everything personally. I always felt like they were insulting me.
Yeah.
Okay. So they would say something to me and I would automatically feel like they were attacking me, my personality, whoever I was. And as soon as they would say it, I would feel inferior. I would feel less than. So I've learned over the time that that was a default tendency that I needed to change, that I needed to understand that not everything that everybody was saying was directed at me directly, and that there might be that something's going on in their life, and what they're saying, it's up to me whether I will accept what they're saying is truth about me or is something else. So that's a
Yeah.
perfect example of me saying, I'm not going to allow this to take advantage of me.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. You've given us two. We could make it three.
Another one?
Yeah. Yeah.
What?
Like, I mean, you've been having this quote for the past 15 years. Like, for me, I feel that this quote is one of those things that, guides you day in, day out. Like, by now, you probably
100%.
should be like maybe thousands, like, you know?
100%. Well, when I
Yeah.
was a kid, I'll tell you a perfect example. When I was a kid in school, in elementary school, primary school, because of my last name being Salama, right? Very
Yeah.
often the other children would call me salami, right? Like the
Salami.
meat,
Oh,
right?
salami
Like
is a
salami.
meat.
Like in America, we have this meat called salami.
Oh, that's a
Salami,
name. That's
bologna,
someone's name.
pastrami. I'm
That's
sorry?
someone's name. That's someone's name. The school I finished from, the time when I was in the university, my VC, our surname was Salami.
There you go.
Lillian
Okay.
Salami. Yeah.
Well, here in America, it's also a type of meat,
Okay.
right? And they would say it to make fun of me. And as a
Yeah.
child, I was very sensitive. And, back then we called it teasing. Now,
Yeah.
really, they were bullying. They were bullies to me. And I would allow what they say to affect me. And I would cry very often.
Yeah.
I was a very sensitive young man, a young boy, and they all made fun of me and they all wanted to pick on me. And they knew that I was easy to pick on. So over the years, I learned to be stronger about that and understand that it was them doing what they could do so they can be stronger at my expense.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Okay. That wasn't exactly at the moment, but over the years, looking back, now everything is in perspective now that you understood that no one could make you feel inferior except you gave them the permission to.
Right. Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Now I can look back and say I was giving them the permission to make me feel that way.
Yeah. Like, I mean, if you say this quote now, it's a really, really thoughtful quote. I happen to have heard it before, but it's not how do I say it, right? I mean, yeah, in theory, it's fantastic.
Yeah.
In in practice, it's not that easy to say,
Yes,
okay,
it takes
I'm in
time.
control, I'm in charge. So for me, the question is, how do we move to actually be in control and not just
Well,
say, okay, I'm in control,
well, that's really what my whole coaching is about. Okay. I help people shift their mindset from lack, from self-conscious, from less than to abundance, self-aware, and feeling self-worth.
Okay. Okay.
So, and it doesn't happen overnight. There's a process, and you have to understand that there are times you're going to take 2 steps forward and maybe 1, 2, 3 steps back. But that's okay because it's part of the learning. Because if you learned it today and tomorrow you said, okay, I'm great and nobody's going to ever affect me again, you're lying to yourself because it doesn't happen overnight. It needs to be like a muscle that you build over time.
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess the question I want to ask now is, what are some things that we could do kind of like to facilitate this process, to make this process, happen faster and be intentional about it instead of just saying, okay, no one can make me feel inferior. And then that's the end of it. You don't put
Right.
anything in place. You
Right.
don't do anything. And then the next day you're wondering, but I believe this quote. How come when she called me, okay, in the example, Salavi, I felt really, really offended. And
Right.
but I believe this quote. How come the thing still makes me sad and makes me angry? Well, how come I'm not the bigger person when, conflicts arise?
So yeah, it's a great question. So it's part of what I coach. For example, I had to learn for myself how to shift my emotions when things would happen. I talked about earlier that my conversations were more like confrontations. So I started by going to coach training, I started to teach myself with the help of what I learned in coach training, how to shift my energy and how to not believe that what I was saying, that everything everybody said, I took personally. I was not going to give them permission anymore, basically. And there was a great book that I read by a gentleman named Don Miguel Ruiz. It's called The 4 Agreements. And one of them is don't take anything personally. So I started to develop an exercise, a practice that I could do. And here in America, children get visited in school, very often, they get visited by the firemen, right? The people who put out the fires. And the firemen teach the children what they should do in an emergency.
Yeah.
They teach them 3 words. It's called stop, drop, and roll. Stop what you're doing if you see smoke or a fire. Drop to the ground under the smoke and roll away from the smoke. So I thought about it and I said, you know what? I'm going to use something like that for myself. If
Okay.
someone comes at me and says something that in the past I would get upset about or take personally, instead of me reacting, I'm going to stop, think about what they're saying, and respond. So instead of stop, drop, and roll, I came up with stop, think, and respond. Now, it took me a long time, and there are still times, nobody's perfect, where I
Yeah.
will react. But I say it used to be 95% of the time I would react right away.
Yeah.
And now maybe it's 5 to 10% of the time. And it's more 90 to 95% of the time where I'm stopping. I'm thinking about what they're saying. Am I taking this personally? Is it something that's going to affect me long term? And I might even say to them, you know, that's interesting. Let me think about it. And I'm giving them a time to recognize that please give me permission to take in what you're saying. And then after a time, I'll respond.
Yeah.
So this is a practice I teach my clients very often.
Yeah. Wow. Thanks for that. Now I want us to do something interesting. I want us to think of it as a coin. I want us to look at both sides of the coin. Now I want you to, apart from the example you gave or about when you divorced your wife, that was a perfect example. I wanted you to give us a perfect example of what a success of this framework would be, where it worked, where you stopped, you thought, and then you responded, and everything went well. And I also want you to think about what a fail, kind of like a fail, that's 5-10% of an instances of, okay, when everything just erupted and, you know, what kind of happened. So let's see how we'll see the two picture.
Yeah, well, I kind of gave you the example of what happened with my wife.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'll go a little back before that. So what happened is in my community, there's a custom that the Saturday before the wedding, I'm Jewish, okay? So
Okay.
we go to synagogue on Saturday. And at the time, I was living about an hour drive from my family.
Let's take a quick pause. If you're enjoying this conversation and want more thought-provoking ideas straight to your inbox, join the Relatable Wisdom email list. It's free, quick, and filled with bite-sized insight, inspiring quotes, and behind-the-scenes reflections from our guests. Just head to relatablewisdom.com/join. That is relatablewisdom.com/join. Or tap the link in the show notes. And hey, subscribing to the podcast helps more than you think, and it's free. So if you haven't already, hit that follow button wherever you're listening. All right, let's get back to the conversation.
Because we were divorced. I was living in New York and they were living in New Jersey, which was about an hour away. And because I'm Jewish and I'm also observant, I don't drive on the Sabbath,
Okay.
right? So there was this conversation beforehand that, we may it's a custom in my community to have a lunch for the couple before they get married on Saturday.
Okay.
So we had a conversation that we were not going to do it. And then comes the weekend before. My son went to New Jersey for the weekend to be with his mother, of course. And he came back and he was very upset. And I said, what's wrong? He goes, Dad, I'm so embarrassed. Mom made the lunch and didn't invite you. She had my future in-laws. She had other family. She had people in New Jersey and you weren't there. So the old me would have freaked out on my son, would have gone crazy on him and got upset and then picked up the phone and did what I said earlier I would have done with my wife.
Yeah.
This time, because of what I had learned about myself, I turned to him and I said, it's not your fault. You did nothing wrong. You had no idea. Thank you for telling me, and I'll decide how I want to move forward.
Yeah.
And then I made the decision to wait until after the wedding.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
All right. So that's an example of how I put it to stop,
Yeah.
think, and respond.
Respond.
Right?
Yeah.
How I work now. In the past, if he had come to me, I would have acted completely different. I would have freaked out. I would have yelled at him. I would have picked up the phone and called my ex-wife right there and say, who do you think you are? And lost it and got very upset with her. But I had learned that it wasn't worth it. All I was going to do was feed my ego to know that I won the argument. I did what I needed to do. But what it would have done was it would have put a shadow or cloud over the wedding. It would have put a cloud over my son and the other side. Everybody would have said, oh, there's Martin again doing what he always does, gets upset and yells at everybody around him. Because that was who I used to be. So I had to change that.
Yeah. I'm curious, is this a personal philosophy or do you happen to share it with others, people around you, people in your life, or this is just or this is the first time you're sharing it?
Oh, no, people know. People know.
Okay.
People come to me very often. My children, when I was making these changes, I didn't say, oh, by the way, watch me change. Because nobody cares what you say. They care what you do.
Yeah.
You know, They came to me and like there was a time when one of them got into a car accident and didn't tell me about it because I was going to go crazy. And when he did, I said, I'm not that same person anymore. Let's figure out how to help this, call the insurance or whatever. And they're like, who are you? This is not who we thought. I didn't say I'm not the same person. I said, okay, you got into an accident. We'll figure it out. And I said, it's okay to come to me. I won't be the person I used to be. You'll see it over time. I didn't make it a thing. I just let them see who I was.
Yeah. Wow. And then in the course of conversation, you started sharing some of the philosophies that is affecting your current behavior right now.
Right. Exactly.
Wow. I'm curious, has there been a time ever over the course of the past 15 years where, depending on the situation, the context, you've had to like adapt the quotes, kind of like modify it to fit the situation?
Can you repeat the question? I didn't understand it.
Yeah, I said I'm curious, in the past 15 years, has there been a time where you've had to like adapt the quotes to fit the situation or the context?
Yes, absolutely. There have been times where I did react, where I did lose my control right there. And what I did, and this is something I also coach. I coach my friends, I coach my clients, my friends too, that it's okay to go back the next day and think about what you did. Stop for a minute, say, I had this argument yesterday. I reacted instead of responded. Why did I do that? Think about it. What made me feel that way? What made me react? And then maybe even go out of my way, call that person that I reacted to, that I got upset, and say, I'm so sorry. I should not have reacted that way. Let's talk it through. And it's not with the look for me to get the apology from them too. It's for me to be open and accept that I made a mistake. I did something wrong, and let me move forward from here.
Okay. The world is pretty distracting. There's so many things, so many noise, so many things out there. So I'm curious, how do you keep this philosophy top of mind every day?
That's a good question. So for me, it's about practicing every day, having a mantra, having certain things that you do to keep your mindset in the right way. Will it work all the time? Of course not. But you're trying to make it where it works more of the time than it doesn't. So I wake up every morning, and I used to be somebody who was complaining about everything that was going on. Oh, I have to do this. This is terrible. Blah, blah, and complain. Now I wake up and I write down in a book, in a notebook, in a quality notebook, 3 things I'm grateful for. Okay. Thank you for being such a beautiful day today. Thank you for whatever I can think of at that moment. It doesn't have to be something profound.
Yeah.
It's just setting my mindset up for positivity and appreciation. And then I created an acronym with the word life, and it's live incredibly full every day. And that means I should be happy and I should be having a meaningful life. So after I do my writing down of things I'm appreciative for, I'm thankful for, I say I'm going to live incredibly full every day. And that sets me out to look for opportunities, look for the positivity. Don't look for ways for problems. Don't look to complain.
Okay. I like the acronym LIFE, live incredibly full every day.
Thank you.
I like that. Yeah. And I like that you do the gratitude. And for me, I understand the practice I understand everything you explained, but for me, for most persons where they don't have a daily practice that they do to kind of like reflect, to look, okay, what did I do yesterday? Or I did that, so I said that thing to that lady, that was mean, I shouldn't have said that. They don't have that practice. And putting such a practice is a habit. It's not exactly something you're just going to, and then it's just going to be there. So for me,
Exactly.
It's how do we slowly ease into having it, okay, this new system into our life?
Well, it's about accepting that you need to change. I have this thing in my book, in my cards, in my coaching. I have a book, it's called Warrior to Warrior. Somebody who goes from worrying all the time to being a warrior who's very strong and strong because they go through adversity and they come out stronger. And it's talking about admission, cleansing, and celebration. Admission means I admit that the way things are going now are not working and I need to change. Cleansing is doing the steps to change. And then celebration is celebrating along the way the little victories of the steps that I did to help me change to become somebody new.
Yeah.
I believe without practice, without guidance, guidelines, and understanding that you're going to take a few steps forward and a few steps back as you're going, you can't go from 100 to 100. You have to go 1 to 2 to 3 to 5 to 4 to 5 to 6 to 4 to 5 to 6 to 7. It's going to be a slow till you get to close to 100.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that. Like, I know that's it's incredibly useful, and I know my listeners will find that incredibly useful. On the final note, if you could you if you had 30 seconds, 60 seconds to pitch this your quotes to someone, could you, I just want us to do something really interesting and just like say it in this, in your your motivational pep talk voice and do it for like next 30 to 60 seconds and then we'll round up the episode and then you can say your call to action. Yeah.
So you want me to say the quote that we talked about in the beginning again?
Yeah. Like in, for the next 30 to 45 seconds, 60 seconds, more like, how do I explain it? More like there was a radio commercial where it was, that's cool, that pep talk, Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Very good. Interesting. New thing.
Okay.
So no one can make you feel inferior without your consent. What I'm saying here is when someone comes at you with something and you feel like they're attacking you, it's how you accept what they're saying. If you accept what they're saying as an attack and that they're trying to hurt you, then you're giving them permission to make you feel less than, to make you feel inferior. So it's in your control to decide whether you're going to allow them to make you feel inferior or not, whether you're going to give them consent. So as Eleanor Roosevelt said, no one can make you feel inferior without your consent means, hey, it's up to me whether I'm going to let you make me feel this way.
Yeah. That was incredible. Thank you so much for that. I
My
feel
pleasure.
super pumped. Yeah. Where can listeners learn more about you? You talked about life coach, you do life coaching and all that. Where can they check out the work you do and all that?
The best place to find me is to go to connectwithmartin.com. Connectwithmartin.com. You can go there. You can get some free things. You can set up to make an appointment to just spend a half an hour with me and learn about how I might be able to help you. You can buy my book, my cards, so on and so forth.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Martin, for coming on the podcast. Thank you so much for sharing and even the little details regarding your personal life and sharing it just to illustrate the quotes. I really, really appreciate that. Yeah. Thank you so much. Thanks for listening to Relatable Wisdom. If you found something meaningful from this episode, make sure to follow or subscribe wherever you're listening. If you'd like to support the show, you can do that by buying me a coffee. The link is in the show notes. Every little bit keeps the conversations going. I'm your host, Wisdom Contour, and I will see you in the next one. Until then, staying curious, stay inspired, and keep growing.